This is the Founders Catalyst. Okay, welcome in for another episode of the Founders Catalyst. Well, we're going to take on a very small topic today of how to live a complete and fulfilling life. We're going to do that in 30 minutes. It can be done, and we are going to take it on. And not only are we going to take it on, I'm actually going to be noble enough to actually pass over the majority of the responsibility to my co-host to actually be able to provide the tool that he uses in order to equip leaders to do exactly that, to be able to live this complete and fulfilling life. So with this very, very small commitment that we're making to our listeners, Lee, again, hopefully you can hear the. hopefully you can hear me just
sarcasm warning. Sarcasm warning.
Sarcasm. It's hard to do it audio, but I'd love for you to just, with me opening up like that, and again, just turning a little bit more serious. You know, we are in the world of helping folks live complete, fulfilling lives. I think that is, while it's hard to show and prove the return on the investment, and that is something that is a whole episode in itself when it comes to the coaching world, I would love for you to sort of firstly to set the table for, you know, where this stands for you in terms of the importance of it, and then introduce where we're going to go within this episode regarding the tool itself.
Yeah. I see a challenge. I think we can do it in 25 minutes and have 5 minutes to talk about tea and biscuits at the end.
Beautiful.
I think many of us do not approach our lives with enough intentionality because life is busy. So we are busy doing. We're busy doing the task list of each day and getting our responsibilities done. And then life happens to us, and we are the result of life happening to us. So I like to flip it on its head and go, what do I want? What is it that I intentionally want from my life? And without realizing, I've been doing this from an early age. As we spoke about on the last episode, you know, I kept getting promoted in the real estate game, but then I realized it wasn't for me. And then I went and opened my own business because, well, that's what you do. Still hadn't quite figured out that it was also the career wasn't for me. So it wasn't just, okay, in that company, in that leadership style, that wasn't for me. Okay, now I go and do it myself. Right, I'm an entrepreneur, but not in this business. I changed to being a cycling coach. It was close, but not quite. Now I've landed on leadership coaching. It's my thing. It's what I'm here to do. But at each moment, there's been an intentionality about how do I want my life to look? One of the reasons I do what I do now is because what's very important to me is to be able to train. I don't function well without some kind of reasonably intense training. So my day is set up so that after this podcast recording, I'm going to go to the gym and do 2 hours of training. I couldn't do that. In
2 hours?
2 hours, yeah.
2 hours.
Well, I'll be there for 2 hours and I'm going to do 2 hours of training. I might have a little steam room and a little bit of a stretch and stuff. But I like training hard, Steve.
Fair enough.
So it's this intentionality, and it came somewhat naturally to me as I was young, but what I didn't have is a roadmap for it. And a friend of mine, when I was in my mid to late 20s, gave me this book by an author called Susan Jeffers, and it's Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And, you know, as a young, tough, macho man, I looked at that title and went, fuck that. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to read that book. It took me about 6 months to get there to read it. However, it's a delightful book. I gave it to a lot of the young athletes I used to coach. I think it's a great mentorship book about life. And Susan has an exercise in there called the 9 boxes. And the point of this exercise is you draw a 3x3 grid. So you create 9 boxes, you put a title into each box, and then under the title, you write what that box constitutes, what that part of your life constitutes. And when I do this with clients, one, it makes you stop and go, what do I want my life to be? So you have to stop and be very intentional. And just like we keep talking about the coaching model, where am I now? So I have to stop and assess my life. Where am I now? Can I even fill 9 boxes? 99% of the time I do this with clients, they can't fill 9 boxes. they'll put 9 titles, and then I'll work with them, and we'll realize that 3 of the titles are the same thing, or and we end up typically with 5 or 6 titles to boxes. And that actually excites me, because what it means is your life has more room. There is more room to live a fuller life. To live
I love
a more
that right
complete
away.
life.
That's so important right away. It's like it's any exercise like this. Immediately when you set that out, you just go, okay, someone's sitting there being like, I can fill that out. And if they did get to 5 or 6 and they notice that they're now starting to just use synonyms for part of the, to fill out the rest, that you're not failing, that you're actually in a place, if you step into that more abundance mindset, it's like, oh, I have room for more. Here I am telling myself that I'm overwhelmed, I'm this, no. I actually have room for more, and I'm curious. Immediately, I'm just like, okay, so walk us through that part of the process.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that. It's important to know, where do I want to get to with this? And I think it's fun to realize that there is so much more. It's exciting to me. And, typically my clients, super high achievers, used to being the smartest person in the room, they want to ace every test. So I give this to them, and they start to get really frustrated. Well, I can't. I got to find more. I got to find more. I got to ace the test. And it's like, no, that's not what this is. This is a snapshot of where you are now, and then we're going to use it as a roadmap to where you want to get to. So that first part is establishing these 9 boxes, and that might take a few weeks to really get to what do I want them to be. And then the next phase of it is, well, what does each box constitute? Where are you now? Where do you want to get to? So where are you now in each of these areas of your life? And then what do you need to create to get there? And then getting really intentional about writing down what I want that to look like. And as we were speaking, I was just dragging mine up, because I did this exercise with my men's group last night, or one of the men's groups that I run last night, not my personal one. And as we were doing it, I was adding notes to mine, because I'm listening to these guys, and it's like making me think, oh, you know what? I think there's a little bit of room in this box for this. So I'm still toying, and I aim to do this every quarter, and I'm still toying with what the latest version of this is. So one of my boxes I'm not sure of yet, but I'm going to share some of my stuff. And I think one of the interesting things when you do this is it changes over time. So this men's group, we did it. One of the first exercises we did when that group started last January. We're back here this January. I wanted to revisit it with them. How many of them changed their boxes? Every single man in the group changed at least 2 boxes. So it shows you how life progresses, and how where you were isn't where you are now, and isn't where you want to get to. So I'm going to give some examples of my boxes, so that people can kind of get an idea of what this looks like.
Yes.
So it kind of shows the way that my brain works. I put the most important box to me in the middle, and that is my marriage. So that is the most important box. Underneath that, I put, I don't know if this is the next important one, interestingly. It probably is from a time point of view, but I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at these as being much more equal. So I think I've got it that my middle row is the most focused ones, and then as I go outwards from that, the less focused ones. So at the top, in the middle, I have friends and community. In the very middle, marriage, and then underneath that, professional. Then top left, personal development, mental health. Top right used to be cycling. It's now competition. I realized cycling was a vehicle for me to compete. I've always competed since a very early age. I think the first competitions I did was swimming, then it was school rugby, then it was athletics, then it was cycling. Now it's go-kart racing. One of the interesting things that come to me, so dear listeners, my mum has moved in with us. Update life. My mum loves quizzes. Well, so do I. So I've put in this box, I want to do some quiz nights with my mum. So I'm looking for a local quiz night that me and my mum can go to. Then outside middle boxes, left-hand side, I've got mentorship giving back. That was something else before. I've swapped that box. I've done a huge amount of mentorship in my life. We talked about this in the last podcast where I mentored other sports coaches to start their careers. I also mentored athletes. You know, me and Steve, we spoke about this off camera before we started the last episode about how we see a difference in the sports coaching world where some coaches think their job is just data facilitating training, and then they're a facilitator to me, they're not a coach. And then a coach is, I take ownership for the well-being of the people that I'm coaching, and there is a different type of relationship. I've always been that kind of coach where I take ownership of the relationship and what we are trying to create together, and responsibility, and felt a deep responsibility for the people I worked with. I need to turn that into something else now. I want some kind of mentorship giving back. And it might not be with humans, it might be with dogs. I might just go and volunteer at the local dog shelter and walk dogs, or when we move, foster dogs and help my dog become a foster parent.
Yeah.
Then I have health and sports, which is different to competition for me now.
Yep.
So this is looking after myself, this is sleeping well, this is getting regular exercise. And then bottom left is family, professional in the middle, then bottom right is travel and adventure. Travel is so important to me, like getting away is so important to me that I think it deserves its whole box. Where some people might have that under, say, mental health.
Right. Yeah. So 2 things immediately that come to mind, and I'm typing as we go because I'm a student and I'm learning. But the first thing that comes to mind is that the intentionality that you have around where you position things on the box. And just listening to you sort of speak through it, I can see how that actually allows you to monitor these things over time, see the connection. There's like, by doing it that way, you're actually creating some form of a bridge between, let's say, all those boxes on the top, all the ones through the middle, etc. And then that can allow you to sort of say, okay, how is there a blurredness to these now over time? Has one started creeping into the other? Has one started kind of, because again, going back to that, we were joking about at the beginning, like the synonyms, and we just kind of call them 2 things that what are actually the same. I think that allows you, because you just made that point there with the travel and the adventure, is that if you were to put that right next to, let's say, like you said, mental health, maybe over time you start to see the connection. It's like, I'm actually at my healthiest mentally when I'm traveling and I'm doing it. So suddenly you just go, okay, well, wait, am I really pursuing both? Is one part of the other? And that in itself, because this is where I was going with this, is really my follow-up, because it's really what I'm now getting curious about, is how are you measuring the effectiveness? And is it as simple, as just saying, how am I remaining intentional? Because that's where we started here, is like creating that intentionality around it. To your point, you've done this with high achievers. They're looking at it as like pass fail. And I'm sure our listeners, they'll fall into that same bracket. They fall into that same bracket, right? That's the kind of listener that we're looking to recruit for this podcast. And even as I'm listening to this too, I'm just like, man, well, I'm already making my 9 as you're talking in my head. And I'm like, well, you're doing pretty shit with that one there, Steve. What's that about? But at the same time, you preface this whole exercise with the practice of intentionality. You did not make this about crushing each one of these and doing it really well. So I think that's super important right now, having heard your 9 and seeing the way that you're framing the 9 and presenting them. How are you measuring the way in which you're being successful towards them?
Yeah. And I think even that, as you're speaking, it was interesting. I was thinking of it, the difference between looking at this as a man and a woman. I think, there's a bit of masculinity.
That's a research study right there.
There's a bit of masculinity in the, are you crushing it? Are you, like, am I achieving it? Did I put all the 9 boxes in?
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of when I've done this with some of my, my female clients, what the difference has been. And typically men are more about the achievement. Am I ticking the boxes off? And the women are more about the connection. Does each box have some kind of connection to each other, and does it have connection to me, and does it have connection to the world, and is it improving my connections with people? So it's interesting to see just from our genders how we might approach this differently. And I really like the way that you're speaking to that, and I want to kick all of that crap to one side, right? This is not about an achievement per se. This is about noticing, where am I in life and where do I want to get in life? And often when we do these things, we attach judgments to it. I should be doing more, or I should be this instead of that, or I should have this instead of that. And we live in a society that's pushing that to us all the time, right? Advertising, this is what you should look like. This is what you should be achieving. Otherwise, you're useless. So it's being able to see, note, and let go of the emotional component of the judgment and the envy and the jealousy, and instead look at it and go, okay, this is me and my life, and I don't need to compare it to anyone else because I can't control anyone else's life. All I can control is mine. So get back to that intentionality of, it's my life. All I can control is my life. What do I want my life to look like? When we look at very successful people, we have somebody who's the richest man in the world right now. When I see him, I just see somebody who's not happy. So I think money is not necessarily, and it's interesting that none of my boxes, money isn't mentioned in any of my boxes. When I look at my professional box, it's more about what I want to achieve as a coach rather than the money I want to make, because I see that as a byproduct. Just the same as in the competition box, typically it's not, even in that, it's typically not about winning. It's more about the experiences I want to have. Like, where do I'm getting so excited. I'm throwing my microphone on the floor. Jesus. It's what are the experiences that I want to create, right? What do I want to experience as part of my journey? Bless you. So I think that's what I'm looking at in this box. It's less of the ticking success and more of the, what are the experiences I want to create? What are the things that I want to nurture? What are the things that I want to make sure happen for me to feel fulfilled?
Yeah. Fulfillment is, I love that and this is what I love about the challenge of this episode of going back to, hey, complete fulfilling life. And we are now 17 minutes into discussing this and allowing you to sort of walk us through this exercise. And we're not talking about results. We're not talking about results. We're talking about approach. We're talking about intentionality. And there's so much truth to that. Something that we've spoken about privately before is I'm a man of faith. And a big part of that is I'm not looking for a return on that. For me, my relationship with God and my practicing of faith and the community that I've created around it, and it would certainly be one of my boxes, is that I get to approach something like that as an approach. It's how I approach my life, and there's no expectation of any kind of return. And so if I can do it in that one box, just to stay with this exercise, then why can that not be the case in all my boxes? Why can I look at every single box as the approach, the way I'm showing up in it and making it a part, ensuring that I make it a part of my life? And I'm so glad you even said it with the competitiveness part of it, because that will be another, whether I find a different word for it, I don't know. But I'm definitely going to take that ownership out of this episode to create my own 9 and to be able to say, okay, I have a relationship with competitiveness now, but it's about bringing my competitive drive out. It's ensuring that gets satisfied because it's there and it's never going to go away. And that's okay. But it's not actually about win at all costs anymore as it maybe once was in a former part of my life. And now it's like, hey, I just need to do once a week at least when I'm at the gym, a 30-minute workout where I am pushing myself and really competing against the version of myself that I was a week prior. And the outcome is like, hey, whatever the result of this is the result, but it's just me versus me, bringing the best out of myself in an environment that is safe for me to do so, where I'm not going to get distracted by beating so-and-so across the way from me. It's about me putting that effort in and knowing that I get to tick that box week in, week out, that I'm showing up intentionally once a week to do that type of a workout. And again, that would be immediately my mind's already flying, because I'm like, okay, does that fall into competitiveness? Does that fall into health and wellness? And you made that point as well, is that your competitiveness doesn't fall into the health and wellness, because at this point in our life, we've been there and done it when it comes to the physical output that we have to put in to see a certain return. Now our physical output is not about that return anymore. It's a very different return that we're looking for. And it's important that we have intentionality about that part too.
Yeah. You know, as I think one of the most pivotal moments for me, and I may have spoken about this here before, I've definitely spoken on your podcast about it, is I had a really bad crash in 2010 and I broke pretty much every bone in my shoulder. So it took 2 reconstructive surgeries and about 8 months before my arm worked properly again. Pivotal moment in my life, made me reassess everything, made me reassess all my friendships, made me reassess my romantic relationship. And one of the biggest things that came from it for me was realizing that sport was a privilege, not a right. And from that, I realized I have to really enjoy this. I'm putting so much time into this thing. You know, sport was my career and my passion. And I'm putting so much time into it that I have to enjoy it. And what did enjoying it mean? And I realized that I didn't get a lot of enjoyment from winning. I got some and some self-satisfaction, but it was usually reasonably fleeting, because then I'm on to the next. Okay, what do I need to win next? Yeah. So I learned to enjoy wins more and really focus on, I need to celebrate this more. But also, I realized that actually what I got most of my enjoyment for was the process. Yeah. Thinking about the process, how to be more intentional, how to create a better training environment, and the time I spent with people. So competition for me now, I've created a go-karting league at the local track that I now run on once a month on a Sunday morning. Of course I have. And because the way they run their league was not to the standard I wanted to run it, and they were doing it on a Wednesday night that was finishing at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's unsustainable to me and my friends. So I thought, what do I want to create? And who do I want to invite? And I'm intentional about who I invite. And I get to turn some people down that aren't good for the community. So I'm very, even when I get there, I want to win, right? I'm never not going to want to win. But what I look at is, how am I driving compared to how I drove last time? How am I improving my driving? How am I being a better driver? How am I being more aware in the race? How am I being smoother and faster? So most of this now is this process rather than results. And I really like that you particularly use the word results. My career, I did double last year what I did the year before, which is phenomenal. And I'm so excited about that, because it offers me and Sarah opportunities to do more things, like more travel, which is very important to me, and gives us more safety, which is important to me, and security. However, that was a byproduct of stepping back, looking at my business and getting incredibly intentional about who do I work with, who do I not work with, and actually let go of some clients to focus more on the right clients for me. And by doing that process, by letting go, I had room for the right types of clients. And now all the inquiries I get are very on brand for me, because my website's so intentional about who it is I work with.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I really want to offer to people. One of your intentions might be sell my business for $1 billion, and I have no problem with that. That's if that's motivating to you, and it is to some of my clients. I don't want to make that wrong, because it's not. However, what I want you to do is to look at, what do I need to do that, and focus on that. Right? What do I need to do? I need to build a healthy business. I need to have healthy employees working for me that are doing creative, smart things that are moving my business forwards. The numbers will take care of themselves if you work on that process part of it. Exactly the same for cycling. You know, the last year I raced was the best I've physically ever been at 46 years old, because I focused completely on the process, and the results were the byproduct. I turned up at Nationals in 2018, best shape of my life. I qualified fastest by half a second, which in a 11-second event is an enormous gap. Right. From second to eighth was closer from me to second.
Right.
And that was all a byproduct of one of your favorite terms, the aggregation of marginal gains, where I looked at every part of what I did and how can I do that a little bit better? And that's what this is for as well. How can I look at my life and have a little bit more intention and a bit more process instead of it just happens? Yeah. Instead of, I'll just spend time with my family. When? How? Are we going to ritualize some of this? My friends. I turn a lot of my friendships into rituals. So we have standing calls. And if we're too busy and we miss the call, so be it. But it does mean that I get to speak to my friends a lot more than I used to before, because I'm not remembering them and trying to fit them into a busy schedule. They're in the schedule and I fit other stuff around them.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing in your 9 boxes is a destination. Everything in your 9 boxes is an environment. It's a way. It's a thing that you get to experience, that you get to put yourself into and immerse yourself into. And I think that is such an easy trap with an exercise like this, just to put your 9 top goals and just go, this is what I'm about, folks. But it's curious because, it's fascinating because I just came off when this episode goes out, it'll be many weeks later, but I just came off a weekend with my wife where I was like, listen, I want to go on a strategy weekend with you.
I saw the pictures. Super cool.
Yeah. And just like we had this amazing 36-hour experience, one of just total, bonding and connecting and intimacy with just who we are as a married couple. But at the same time, we had this huge calendar. It's literally called the Big Ass Calendar. There's a couple of different versions of it. And we started there. We started by mapping out the year. But what came of that was suddenly now, without knowing it, we were going into our version of our 9 boxes. And we were going into, okay, so looking at the year, how do we ensure that we prioritize our faith? Looking at the year, how do we prioritize our family time? Looking at the year, how do we prioritize our travel? All this kind of thing. We started going into that. And another word you can replace prioritize with is protect. It's one of my favorite terms I love using with my clients is like, what do you need to protect the time to make this happen? And so now we're not just simply saying, I need to make time. We're actually saying, no, the time's been made. But now the challenge is protecting that time, ensuring that we actually keep this a priority at the front of our focus. And again, what I love about this exercise
I'm going to pause you there, Steve, because
Yes.
I think that's such an important piece that I want to reiterate it.
Yes.
It's interesting. I'm having a reaction to the word protect. So I kind of want to see what that's bringing up. And it's correct. What I often see people do, my wife will do this. The leaders I work with will do this. So say, here's my non-negotiable. Here's the things that are really important to me, right? Great. They put it in their calendar and then gets a new client and just takes the gym session out, just takes their training session out and puts a new client in there. Because I've got to support my business, or I've got to be available for the client. I get lessened. And I see people do this a lot. What they want, their dreams, their hopes keep getting eroded. And that's why I really like protect, because it erodes. You just get all these things eroded over time because we can't say no. Or we think that one extra client's going to be more important. It's not. It never is. No. And I think that's why I really like what you said about protect, and it's these things are now my non-negotiables. And I think that's an important thing to discover in life. What is non-negotiable to you? Competition is non-negotiable to me. During COVID, the velodrome closed. I couldn't go ride my bike and race anymore. I also at the same time broke my ankle. That meant that track cycling was more difficult for me to do. It's one of the things that really irritates my ankle. So I didn't compete for an entire year in anything. And my wife's like, there's something different about you. Need to just get the fuck out. You need to do something.
Yeah.
And it's that competition with myself that I needed. And that I did a 9-box exercise. I realized that cycling actually represented competition. What did competition mean to me? That's when I discovered go-kart racing, because I looked for something and thought, what can I be competitive? What have I done that I like? Oh, I like driving. Oh, here's this go-kart track an hour away. Let's go do that. So I wanted to pause you because I think that, you're talking about it, but I want to reiterate how important protecting things that are important to you are. And that's where this exercise or exercises like this are so important, because you have to establish what is the things I want to protect. Exactly. What are my non-negotiables? What are the things that really, really matter to me? And often as business leaders, our relationship with our children, our relationship with our family, our friends suffers because we don't protect them, because we believe we have to work 80 hours a week, because we believe, it's a story, it's not truth. We believe that being the best parent is providing for our family. Well, not if you're neglecting them emotionally, it's not.
Yeah. And it's just tricky to keep it to one episode, and I knew it would be, but we did promise the listeners that we were going to accomplish it in 30 minutes, and we just immediately hit 30 minutes as I was finishing that sentence. And here's what I want to say now to close this, is that, and I love that we've done it this way. I've allowed you to sort of serve our listeners with this tool and just play the role of facilitator and trying to bring as much out of it as possible. But when we look at life as a process and not a result, fulfillment is actually not only more realistic, I believe we start to frame it correctly and accurately. Is that too often we're trying to achieve fulfillment based on the results of life. And if we focus on the process that is life, fulfillment is so much more attainable, and we're defining it more accurately as well. And I want to close right there, because for me, if you can take that away, because that is what I've taken away from the 30 minutes. I'm curious what our listeners took away too. But this 9-box exercise can be a catalyst. Ding, 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 using the word from the from the show's name. It can be a catalyst.
Special price to Steve.
That's right. It can be this catalyst for better defining the way we approach life, i.e. making it a process. And therefore, if we're going to approach life as a process, then fulfillment becomes a byproduct of the process and not the result. So I want that to be what you take away here, because that is very much what I took from this exercise. And that I would like to believe that anybody that's willing to go 3x3 right now on a sheet of paper, on a whiteboard, you can see that for yourself. You can attain that for yourself by simply committing to this exercise as a start, and then getting super curious around what each of those things that you come up with are, challenging yourself to say, okay, those two are very similar, if not the same thing. One needs to be disappeared, another one can be replaced, etc., etc. And not to put too much of a time pressure on this. I don't think this is an exercise you complete the first time. I think it takes a ton of times going back to the whiteboard, giving yourself that grace of being able to say, hey, this is something can evolve over time. Things can be taken out, traded in, traded out, etc. But with that insight from me, mate, I'd love for you to close us out here. Just any additional insights around the tool, or even just the thoughts that I provided there.
Yeah. So how I look at this tool is, the first part of the process is to name your boxes and be ruthless, right? Go through, name your boxes. Can 2 boxes be put together? Go back, name your boxes again. Can another 2 boxes be put together? It take weeks to do that if you need to, until you get the titles that really fit for you. Try them on. Does this really fit for me? Then write your bullet points on your 9x9 grid. What comes under it? So, for me, friends and community. So that's 3 to 4 trips with my guy mates a year. That's make new local friends. That's my own personal men's group. And I want to join another one this year, specifically for coaches and leaders. And then I've got a list of people that I do have regular calls with, and most of those are now ritualized. And then once you've done this, the next level is to take that each individual box and turn it into a page. Now see if you can write a whole page about what that part of your life looks like. And then when you're coming back every 3 months, you're looking at that page. Did I get the things done that I wanted to do? Did I book the vacations I wanted to do? Okay, change it. What's the next one that I want to do? What's the next thing I want to do? Did I ritualize all of my calls with my friends? No, I didn't. Okay, I've got more. Is there somebody else I want to add to the group? Is there a new friend that comes in here? My competition, right? Here's the go-kart tracks I want to go and try. I've discovered some more, right? Let's write a list of more. And not even just that, I want you to leave with some actions. So when you've got that page established, what are the actions I need to leave with? So if I want to go to Japan again, when am I going to go? Right? Let's create the time. Have I then booked it? What do I need to do to book it? Where do I want to go in Japan? And just getting so intentional about these things that the fulfillment is the byproduct of the intentionality. We look at what we want to do, we get intentional about it, we make plans, and then the fulfillment will just happen. The reason I have a box for travel is because I get as excited about planning the travel as I do about doing the travel and thinking about where I want to go and the hotels I want to stay at and the experiences that I want to have. I put so much time into that. It has to be its own box because I give it that amount of time.
Right.
So just to finish, create your 9 boxes, spend time creating the titles, be ruthless, go over and over and over until it feels it fits. Write your bullet points, take that box, turn it into a page, write what a whole page of that part of your life looks like. Do this every 3 months and you will find sometimes the boxes change. Sometimes the stuff in it gets done or doesn't get done. Why didn't it get done? Okay, because you don't want to do that anymore. Take it out, reassess. It's such a wonderful tool to keep coming back to.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I have my own practices, but I'm always open to a new one. And this is one that you've mentioned to me a number of times. I've never acted upon, but no better time than now in terms of just coming off the back of this. And I will probably take my stab at, version 1 at some point later today.
I look forward to you sending me over version 1.
I know, and here's what, and I want to promise something on behalf of Lee to our listeners, is that with this episode, we'll not only take the transcript as we always do, but we may even try to just to get a couple of photos that we can put in with this as well. I think it'd be great for folks to see that. But anyway, this has been wonderful. I love doing this more practical way of the show, and I think we've given ourselves the flexibility to do it like this with this. And again, we're always looking for feedback. What did you take from this? Why are you excited to apply this in your world? And then once you do apply it, what are you getting out of it? What are you noticing? And this feedback helps us continue to provide the type of substance within these episodes that can be truly impactful. So appreciate your efforts for the people, Lee. And in the meantime, looking forward to doing this again with you very soon, my friend.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder to everyone, me and Steve are coaches. This is what we do. This is our job. You want someone to help you with your 9 boxes, and it's more fun when you do it with somebody else. Give us a shout. Love to help you through this process.
Just like podcasting, mate. More fun to do with somebody else. Thank you, everybody.
On that note.
Bye for now.